Like and subscribe right now, or you're going to have bad luck for the rest of the week. 10 most unusual rains in the world. Have you ever seen something unusual fall from the sky? Depending on where you live, the normal things like rain, snow, or even hail shouldn't come as a surprise to you. However, imagine an incident in which it is raining frogs, fish, or how about blood or worms? All these things have happened before, and can still occur without reason. Usually, however, these things don't just magically appear in the clouds and then fall down. We'll investigate both the logical and the unexplainable in our video, so be sure to stay with us through the entire thing. Number 10. Frogs. In 1873, a frog fall struck Kansas City, and another one happened in Dubuque, Iowa in 1882. In both of those cases, there were no waterways close by from where these frogs could have been swept up from. Specialists guessed that the Kansas City incident was because of a windstorm somewhere else that had carried the frogs to the city. Researchers concentrating on the Dubuque case likewise accepted that the frogs were sucked up by a strong breeze, then at that point epitomized into hail before being unloaded onto the clueless residents of Dubuque. Later on in 2005, many frogs tumbled from the sky into a town in Serbia. This frog rain happened during a heavy storm, which a Serbian climatologist believed was the reason. Perhaps the frogs aren't falling from the sky? Normally, a powerful storm can lead to frogs moving away from their natural habitat to other places to gather. And thus, on a rainy and stormy day, if you see frogs around your area, don't just assume that they are falling down together with the rain. Number 9. Spiders. It's great that of the 40,000 or so types of spiders on the planet, just 23 are viewed as social. One of these social animal categories, Anolosimus eximius, assembled for a little party one day in 2013 in Santo Antonio da Pratina, Brazil. The following thing the inhabitants knew: spiders were raining from the sky. This specific species, which lives in settlements that are large in numbers, like to assemble later in the early evening or the afternoon and make tremendous nets and webs to trap bugs for their next feast. The webs can be just as extensive as 65 feet tall or 19 meters and stretch all the way from below tree canopies or buildings. Regularly, they stay in their tacky webs and trust that supper will come calling. However, these spiders can be blown away from their nets in strong winds and fall in thousands with the rain. Number 8. Hay. You can watch this on YouTube. It's really entertaining. A lovely bright day in England 2011, a man is taking a video, seemingly on his patio, of clusters of some substance gradually floating down from the sky. "What is happening?" he says as he records the scene. The substance falling from the sky was actually hay. On warm late spring days, the hot earth emanates a puff of warm air, known as thermal, which rises into the atmosphere. Thermals can get things as they rise, commonly light and effectively movable items like animal feed and other dry grasses. It's likewise typical for thermals, which can also twirl like cyclones, to get around residue and sand. The higher the thermal ascents, however, the more it cools. Eventually, it cools down to such a point that it leads it to drop everything it carries. And because of this, the hay shower was recorded in 2011. Number 7. Meat. It's 1876, and we're in the Olympia Springs district in Kentucky. Mrs. Allen Crouch was outside, staying out of other people's affairs, when enormous meat drops floated down around her. The sky was clear, which bewildered Mrs. Allen Crouch even more. Approximately 2 creeps by 2 inches or 5 centimeters by 5 centimeters, the flakes covered the ground and stood out of the fencing. Mrs. Crouch, the brilliant lady that she was, left them there. 2 men stopped by a day or so later, when they tasted the meat and described its taste as similar to mutton. Tests of the meat were taken and examined. One report by Leopold Brandeis, distributed that year in Scientific American, stated the substance was nostoc, a freshwater blue-green mold regularly found in wet spots in jelly-like provinces. Typically more modest in size, Brandeis said this nostoc was more likely enlarged with water when it poured down on the Crouch family. However, the strange fact was that there was no rain that day, so it could never have been nostoc. Number 6. Yellow rain. The Hmong named the term yellow downpour during the 1970s, following the communist triumphs in Southeast Asia. In those days, the new systems were furious with the Hmong, who had been partners of the US and also battled against them. In 1975, the Hmong started detailing when they saw a slick, yellow fluid tumbling from an airplane. The liquid seemed like it was a downpour when it hit the top of their homes, which drove them to name it yellow downpour. Before long, the Hmong experienced a heap of medical problems, including seizures, visual deficiency, and blood draining from the nose. So, what was this yellow downpour precisely? The US government examined and blamed the Soviets for utilizing trichothecene mycotoxins, a toxic substance produced using a parasite that can be utilized as a natural weapon. The Russians denied their contribution. Then again, numerous researchers, even a few American ones, said it very well may be the excrement of Asian bumblebees amassing through the air in huge numbers. At the point when the yellow downpour dried, it turned into dust-containing pollen. Until now, no valid reasons for the yellow rain have been identified. Number 5. Birds. Around 5,000 red-winged blackbirds poured down from the skies in Arkansas late on December 31, 2010, the majority of which were either dying or dead. A couple of days after the incident, a comparable occasion occurred in Louisiana, including nearly 500 red-winged blackbirds. Specific individuals would agree that hundreds and indeed thousands of birds tumbling from the sky should be exceptionally surprising. A delegate from the U.S. Land Survey's National Wildlife Health Center said throughout the most recent 30 years, there have been 16 occurrences where more than 1,000 red-winged blackbirds continuously died, tumbling from the sky like a downpour. In both cases we talked about, the birds gave indications of trauma. The Louisiana birds were found close to an electrical cable. Specialists say the animals might have been sick or frightened, flew into the electrical cord, then, at that point, plunged to their demise. In the Arkansas case, the birds were considered to have passed in midair. Since it was New Year's Eve and firecrackers were detonating in the skies, the assumption is that the birds were surprised and terrified, flying into homes, vehicles, one another, and also straight into the ground. Number 4. Blood rain. In 2001, the people of Kerala faced a strange situation of rain which was red and smudged their garments. In local areas, the huge drops fell on and off for more than a 2-month term, decreasing over the long run. While the rain took on yellow and green tones some of the time, the leading tone was dark red. At first, some speculated an exploded meteor brought about this surprising move, as a few early observers revealed hearing a blast and seeing a blaze of light before the red downpour initially fell. The following idea was that the red sand blew in from Arabia, which blended in with the downpours. However, studies showed that the red particles separated from the water were not grains of sand. Instead, the ruby bits seemed to consist of cells from biological origin. They resembled those of bugs. Number 3. Black rain. The Hiroshima and Nagasaki blasts yielded exactly 200 various types of radioactive isotopes, or at least atomic splitting particles of uranium and plutonium that got away from fission. Following the explosions, these and different materials illuminated by neutrons from the bomb were carried high into the air. The blending of gigantic measures of airborne illuminated materials joined with hotness and warm flows from the firestorms prompted rain in the 2 urban areas within 30 to 40 minutes of the bombings. As the aftermath particles were blended in with carbon buildup from citywide flames, the outcome was the astonishing and harmful dark rain. This dark rain arrived as tacky, dim, perilously radioactive water at ground level. It smudged skin, apparel, and structures, yet it was also ingested by breathing and by eating and drinking of the contaminated food and water, causing radiation harm. Number 2. Fish. While it's not at all normal for the skies to pour down fish, it has actually occurred in more than one spot all over the planet. In 1947 in Marksville, Louisiana, an assortment of fish started falling from the sky. The fish were 2 to 9 inches, or 5 to 23 centimeters in size. Researchers say tornadoes or the updrafts with rainstorms can be sufficiently strong to lift fish out of the water as they twirl over lakes or oceans. Then, at that point, convey them significant distances before releasing them when the updrafts lose steam. Waterspouts can also grab and carry fish. They can fly along at a 100 mile per hour or 161 kilometers per hour rate, which is surely powerful enough. Nobody can confidently say whether one of these peculiarities caused the rainfall with fish. Number 1. Jelly. In 2012, Steve Hornsby from Dorset, UK, was astonished to find chunks of thick blue material coming down to the ground alongside hailstones during a hailstorm. Uncertain what these 1-inch bundles of goop were, he gathered a couple and put them in the fridge to save for additional review. Specialists imagined that maybe the blue goo balls were really eggs from some sort of sea animal, and that they had been conveyed up high by birds. And so on. After research, it was found out that the balls were really sodium polyacrylate, which is a substance utilized in things like diapers to suck up liquid and potting soil. The genuine inquiry regarding these jelly balls was how they ended up in the Hornsby's yard. Did they really drop out of the sky, or did the liquefying ice from the hailstorm make existing gyms quickly grow? Nobody knows a single thing about this. That is all for today's video. Thank you all for watching. While you're here, go ahead and click on one of these 2 videos on your screen. See you there!